we're going to take a tour through the now closed Depot Museum. But first we'd like to give you a little information about the building itself. In February of 1874, it was one of the most important days for the city of Erlanger. The Cincinnati New Orleans Pacific Railroad would come through the city. It was owned by an Englishman, Baron Emile de Erlanger, who the city's named after. The first train went through the city in 1877, and this depot is the last wooden depot remaining on the Cincinnati to New Orleans route. Next. Mr. Steve McCarty of the Real Estate Department of Norfolk Southern, who owned the railroad in 1992, presented the Mayor Fred Thomas copies of a new lease to the railroad park and the deed to the 1877 depot. The stipulation was to move the depot 100 feet from the track. And the Erlanger Historical Society applied for and received the Kentucky Bicentennial Grant of $10,000 to move the depot. The city asked the Historical Society to form a 501c3 and help them create a city museum for the depot building.
Memories, dear.
And so many people volunteered. The Tony Brown Construction performed the excavation. The Dries Company provided Alan Getz to be the superintendent. George Trimble poured the footer. Erpenbeck Builders did the plumbing and the electricity. Jack Gardner of CBBN was the architect, and Jim Viox was the engineer. And all of that was done without charging a cent to the Historical Society. All we had to pay for at the time was the moving of the depot, which was $10,000. A group of men, Paul Hahn, Jim Owen, Bill Quant, traveled to Virginia-based Southern Museum to learn the color of the paint of the exterior of the depot. In 1895, Henry Sherwin and Edward Williams had the contract for paint for the Southern Railroad. And these men found that the color for the paint in 1905 for the depot was green and gold. And so that's what the exterior was painted. And the Lions Club and the volunteers from the Historical Society painted the museum. Now the city did just repaint the museum because it was in need of repair. So we're happy about that. In 1994, the Historical Society started raising funds for the depot park. To raise the funds, they started a brick walkway along Crescent Avenue. They purchased a flagpole and had a dedication of the depot park, the walkway, the flagpole, and they created a time capsule at the time. And the Historical Society received a $1,000 grant from the electric company for lighting on Crescent Avenue. Next. And Mr. Steve McCurdy of the Norfolk Southern put the society in contact with Joseph Newkirk, who was the head of the Norfolk Southern, to procure a caboose. And Mr. Viox headed up this engineering product. a project, and Carlisle Construction moved the caboose from the railroad track into the park on a snowy Saturday morning. And all of that was done by in-kind service. Nobody paid a cent. A gazebo was built by Pat Geddes, and this was paid for by the Historical Society. And we also, many weddings took place in that. If you can see, it's all decorated for a wedding in this picture. And then there's the Amish train in the park, and that wooden train cost $5,000 and was paid for with donations. And now we're in 1995, and the Erlanger Historical Society received what was called an iced tea grant, and it was for $58,000. And City Council requested the City of Erlanger now take over all the maintenance, construction, museum contacts, and the park. So as of March 21st, 1995, the City of Erlanger was in charge of the museum park and the museum. And the Historical Society then just became the charitable arm of the museum. And this gave the volunteers time to catalog, provide displays, provide history. We did a history book, but the depot now was on the city budget, and they paid for all the maintenance and owned all that property. And this is a plaque that has all the names of all the folks, and it's inside the depot, who donated all the funds to make this happen. And Dixie Viox and Betty Bush were the curators, and on Saturdays they would, and at 5 p.m. on meeting nights, many Girl Scout troops and Boy Scout troops came to earn a badge. And so we had our own badge made to give each of the children as they did that. So now as we're walking the door, you will probably see this is the most valuable piece in the museum. The display case on the right-hand side as you walk in the door. It was donated to us from St. Vincent de Paul. One of the members was the manager at St. Vincent de Paul, and he knew they would have no use for this kind of a case. But it took 4 men to carry it into the depot, but it would not fit through the door. So the men took one of the windows completely out and brought it in through the window. It's a vintage jewelry case from a jewelry store in Hyde Park. And it has the vintage curved glass on either side. And when we were getting ready to do the inventory, the research on this showed that it was $15,000 for a case like this now. And then the uniforms, if you can see, stand behind the case. There are uniforms in the museum. I should say there were uniforms inside the museum from the Civil War through the Gulf War. And each one has the story and the picture of the person attached. That's the World War I uniform of the Shaben. That was a Shaben. So you see how small the folks were in those days. And then the next one is, yes. Now that, as you can see, it looks like there's just so much stuff. And everybody, I mean, lots of folks will say, you know, it's just too much stuff. But every item in the museum was donated. And when people donate an item, they really want to see it. And so it is kind of, that whole case is just crowded with stuff. This section has the old tools, and it has String Town on the Pike book by John Uri Lloyd. And it has local businesses like an ice pick from Doozy Brothers and a calendar from Boone Kenton Lumber and cards and chips and costume jewelry. And this case has a nurse's cap from Mary Kay Bell, who was a charter member, and she retired from the TB hospital down in Fort Wright, which was Dr. Farrell who opened that. And the red book is the Bible of Father Kolb, who was the first pastor at St. Henry's Church. And there's also a first edition of Gone with the Wind. And then on the far left are the World War II memorabilia. Next one. Okay, and in this section you'll see the Erlanger High School before it was named Lloyd. That's and the St. Henry High School sports jackets. And there's kitchen utensils, and on the top shelves there's World War II ration books and S&H green stamp books and ration stamps. I think maybe some of you may remember all that. And then we have a sports corner. This basketball was donated by Tubby Smith, a coach at the University of Kentucky. And there's lots of Cincinnati Reds memorabilia. One of our charter members was Mary McClure, and she was the secretarial general manager for Bob Howsam and Louis Nippert during the Big Red Machine. And Mary had so many items that she donated, and he had many funny memories to share about those days. And this is the fire and police case. This case was donated by Village Square, and it originally was a case in Knapmeyer Drugstore for Mr. Milner's jewelry. And this was the first piece that was donated to the museum. It came from the Covington Courthouse, and it's a bust of Mr. Hallam. Mr. Hallam was a lawyer and a great orator, and upon his death, the Bar Association had this bust cast. And so when they heard we were opening a museum, the city of Covington donated that to us. And this is a picture of the visitors on Saturday afternoon at the depot. We only volunteered one day a week when the museum first opened, and we would open the museum. The Historical Society opened the museum from noon until 4 every Saturday. Now, the picture there is of Mr. Russell Victor, and these were newspapers that he did a local newspaper in the late 1940s, and donated all of those, the family donated all of those to us, and we had them laminated. Now you see that window behind the dress there. That was the ticket window, and the railroad clerk would sit inside, and the people would purchase their tickets from outside. Then you'll notice we had a ball cap collection, and the outfit was an outfit donated by Mary Gurney Slater, and that was her honeymoon dress. And this is the children's corner, and inside are the items. Inside that armoire is all of our materials that we sold: the T-shirts, the note cards, the Afghans. That was our closet. And hanging on the outside are bathing suits donated by the Erlanger school superintendent, Edgar Arnett, who said he wore those.
They were made of wool. They were made of wool. Very heavy.
Yeah. And this is the wedding. We have many wedding dresses, but this is the one that was the Thelma Setter Owen wore this wedding dress. And on the wall there on the shelves hangs a letter from a Civil War general thanking the women of Erlanger for feeding the troops as they marched through the city of Erlanger. And that's a picture of Thelma Setter Owen. And this is the Civil War display. It contains uniform jackets, and the bonnets that are in that case were donated by Terry Collis, and they were in his family since the 1800s. And there's photos of the slave quarters that was donated by Patty Sutcamp, that from her family had taken those pictures. And then a gentleman came and did all of that for us, the HO train display. And this was a donation of 240 copies of railroad magazines by Dr. James Kelly. The books were used by many train buffs. On Saturdays, lots of folks would come and do research out of those books. And if you notice, there's a large tobacco display to the right of the books. Now, this is in the train room. And it's just cluttered full of Southern Railroad memorabilia that many people who worked for the Southern Railroad donated to us. And there in that first picture that has the black frame, that's all about the first day that the train went through Erlanger in 1877. And this is the there are framed trains, and the trunk belonged to Thelma Setter Owen, the Owens family owned Forest Lawn Cemetery, and Mrs. Owen traveled to Europe often and used this trunk. On the top of the trunk sits her French ivory handled set. Yes. And can we go back, or no? There, the coat there is from Henry Carter, who had Carter's dry goods store. And he came to the museum often and spoke to us about his trials and tribulations in the Holocaust. And he donated this coat, and it's a leather coat, and it was the coat that he wore to come to the United States. And these are the hats and gloves donated by Ermidale McNay. Her husband owned a Boone Kenton Lumber, and Ermidale was noted in Erlanger as being a fashion plate. So she had all these beautiful things that she donated to us. The community center, the mayor decided that they would close the Depot Museum, and the plan was to open and renovate the depot to a community center. But council would not approve the funding, so there's no plans that we know of for the 1877 depot at all. And now these are just kind of some random photographs of Heritage Day. We'd have the flag raisings and the horse and buggy. Paul Dusing was always our MC for a Heritage Day. There's Betty and on the left, and Diane in here tonight, and they're just having some fun at the boards that were set up so that people could take pictures. That's the crowd. We always had a good crowd. And you know, we started this in 1992, and our last Heritage Day was like 2020. And only 2 times out of all those years did we ever have rain. It was always a sunny, nice day. Those are the girls doing their samba dances. And all of the kids would come and do their performances. That's Lloyd's band, who would come each year. That's just our advertisement for Heritage Day. Now that was the room where we did all of our social activities. That was a Christmas party. And every year at Christmas, we would have a Christmas display in the park. And that's the big tree that sits in front of the depot. And we'd have Santa and Mrs. Claus. And that's my grandson sitting on Santa's lap. Isn't he cute?
Amen.
That's all. And we did the Erlanger, Elsmere, Images of America, Arcadia book. And that was at Borders, where we did a signing. And we also did a history of Erlanger, which was called Buffalo Trails in the 21st Century. And the Erlanger Historical paid a small stipend to Wayne and Debbie Oggs to create that book, and they did a fantastic job. We would used to do library presentations, and this was one we did when the 1940 census became able to go on to Ancestry. And so that's what that was that one. And this is Mr. Fred Johnson. He was a great-grandson of the French family who were slaves for the Timberlake family. And when the slaves left the plantation of the Timberlakes in 1861, one of them took the bells from the Timberlake sleigh. And the French family members came to Erlanger and joined us for lunch one year and brought these bells to show us. And do you remember when we had Grilling with Tim? And this was one of the members won the Grilling with Tim night, and so we had a big party in the park. Now, this is Summer Depot Days, each Tuesday and Thursday from June 6th to July the 27th. It was like every year. The Erlanger Library and the Erlanger Depot Park would have free lunch, and that was provided by the Erlanger Elsmere School. And they had that in the park during the summer. And this was like the biggest event because they brought a cow in that day. And this was the highlight of 2010 when we had a visit of Mrs. Minnie de Erlanger Churchill, who was the granddaughter of Baron Frederick de Erlanger. And if you'll see that one, and then there's the next one, we had a dinner at Quality Inn that night. And this is the Erlanger Historical Society, depot sign. The depot is on the National Registry. We had a grant for $5,000 to research the Erlanger proper subdivision and the Erlanger Depot. And we were recognized through the Federal Department of the Interior, and so it is on the National Registry. That's just the picture of the depot and the park. And this was made by the volunteers for the centennial. And I wish we still had it because we could be in the Memorial Day parade. Oh, and this is just a group of couples. We had a grand night and raised some funds at the drawbridge. We had about 350 people who attended. Jim Owens did this painting, and we had we made note cards out of it, and that was a nice fundraiser for us. Jack Shaben was president of the organization for, I don't know how many years. And when Jack passed away, lots of folks donated funds, and Jack always wanted a kiosk in the Depot Park where we could post upcoming events. And so that's what we did with the money, and the kiosk is still there. And so we are still monthly putting things in there about the organization. We received a $60,000 grant to renovate the 1936 Southern Railroad caboose. And Jack Shaben was the one who basically got this grant. He went down to a place in Latonia called Progress Rail just to see what the cost would be to celebrate our 25th anniversary of the of the society. And when he was there, the man said to him, "We do a once-a-year donation, and let us come look at what you have, and maybe you can apply for that." And sure enough, we received it. So it was completely renovated. And the fireman of Erlanger, he had this donated to us to thank volunteers. This was the Centennial quilt. If you were part of organizations, you may have remembered this, but we notified all the organizations in the city, and they each did a square of the quilt, and then we had a lady who put that all together for us. And this was our last grant. We received this from, I don't know if y'all know, but when you fill out your taxes, there is a check place where you can say, "I want money donated to the Historical Society of Kentucky." So the Kentucky Historical Society, with those funds, gives grants each year. And so that grant was received for a preservation. And so it was to, do all the papers that you need to keep things from getting mildewed and all of that type thing. And that's the way the depot looked before we moved it. So thank y'all.
Thank you.